Hi everybody, welcome back to Ask AJ, and you know what we talk about here. We talk about intelligent automation and robotic process automation. Have a very special Talking Bots with a Buddy series coming up right now with someone I'm very excited to have with us, Barbara Hodge, who is the editor of the SSON website.
Absolutely.
And Barbara and I have known each other for several years now, me having come out of the shared service industry, she being a key part of shared service and outsourcing network. And so I thought it would be fun for Barbara and I to talk today about things that we have seen and how we've seen things change in shared service and outsourcing. The topic du jour, I guess, moving from one place to another.
Year, maybe do decade.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Barbara, talk a little bit about, in your role, what access you get to practitioners in shared services and outsourcing.
Okay, so our world consists, as you know, of shared services practitioners, right? So the SSON is a global forum which has been going for 20 years now, specifically of people who are looking to optimize their service delivery. So over the last, let's say, 3 or 4 years, what we've really found is there's been such a growth in interest in any tool that helps them deliver their services better.
Right.
So let's say 15 years ago, the excitement was around outsourcing, right? We can cheaper and more efficiently perhaps provide these services. Over the last 4 years, it's suddenly been this automation, which has always been there, but we're now calling it robotic, and it is robotic.
Yes.
And therefore it's had all kinds, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but all kinds of benefits for our members, the shared services and outsourcing community, which really, I think, is one of it's business driven, and yet shared services is so perfect to run, optimize, and deliver this capability.
Absolutely, and I think as proof of that, Barbara and I are in Chicago right now at Intelligent Automation Week, which is 3 years old now, I think.
And I think has grown by about 8 times.
Yeah, I
since
think
3 years ago.
I think the first year I was on stage that year, and there were maybe 50 people, maybe.
Cozy,
yeah.
yes.
So certainly we've seen a huge interest in having a fully dedicated set of sessions related to intelligent automation. But I think one of the other interesting things, and Barbara and I first started talking about having this conversation in March when we were at Shared Service and Outsourcing Week
in Orlando,
and talk a little bit about, that compared to what we were seeing specifically in the vendor areas maybe 7 years ago when I started coming.
Wow, AJ. So what's interesting is, if we stick with the shared services theme for a moment, because as you say, we now, IQPC, we run all kinds of events. Initially, we ran this IA activity, RPA activity from within the shared services event because that made sense. We saw so much growth. There were 2 things going on. A, shared services is not just about intelligent automation, so we wanted to keep that authenticity. Secondly, there was simply too much interest, too much demand for it not to overtake another portal, and so it's had its own event. So I just wanted to sort of clarify.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're here.
Absolutely.
To the vendor side, to the provider side, I first heard about RPA through a press release Genpact issued, where they talked about a partnership with something called Automation Anywhere.
Right.
And so I think I emailed Tiger at the time or someone and said, I'd love an intro to this company, met me here on the phone, and that was maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago. So there were a couple of providers that were in the early days that were at our events and that decided to place a stake and say, we think this is where we can grow.
Right.
And early on, I don't think that was that well understood by none of us.
Yeah.
It was RPA. You kind of understood because technology is what drives all this optimization anyway. So there's a technology that kind of connects the dots, and there's a little bit more technology.
Right.
But there was a lot of I would say a lot of apprehension and misunderstanding, which frankly there still is.
Right.
It isn't that easy. It's easy, but it's different, I guess I should say.
Right.
And so from the early days where we had just 1 or 2, memorably someone brought an actual robot running around. So I think these days we're all trying to disassociate from this robot vision, right? It's not a scary robot who's going to shift your desk away from you, sit themselves down. It's really the way we see it in the shared services world, the way it's represented successfully is it's a digital assistant to you.
Absolutely.
Right? It's someone who, there are parts of my job I'd like automated. Stuff I do where I think it's not even hard, it's just time consuming.
Right.
maybe we need to talk about a solution for me. But so that's, from there, I think what's happened, these events like ours serve to educate the community. I was just talking to a company over there that provides a solution, and we were saying over the years, they've been coming for years too, the delegate here, the practitioner, has become more educated.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
The practitioner understands to some extent what solutions cannot do and what they can do, which I think is great. It means companies like you guys at Symphony have been doing your job, right? In explaining, educating, clarifying. So I don't know if I answered your question.
No,
I
I
went
think
around
you
lots
did.
of circles, but it's exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
It's exciting.
Well, I think about the first shared service and outsourcing week that I went to. It was predominantly, the discussion was about big data.
I remember
big data.
that. I remember meeting you, and I remember the discussion.
And just this last spring, and if we just use the vendor area as a reflection of the desires of the community, it was primarily around data analytics, still a lot of outsourcing. This year, probably 90% of the vendor area was in some way tied directly to automation, intelligent automation in some way, and a huge portion of the agenda, and that was about automation, and that was because that's what you all are hearing.
That's what our customers want. So what our customers want, again, the objective is so important, right? There are companies, I think, that send someone to an event and say, I don't know what it is, but we need to do it.
Right.
From what I understand, what I hear from experts like yourselves is that's probably not the right way, because you will inevitably come up against a disappointment.
Right.
So I think what's important from the shared services funnel for a moment, you need to know what you want to achieve, right? Where are you seeking performance improvement, or where do you want to avoid a process? Once you know that, what are the tools? Who's in the market that can help me?
Right.
So some help might come from communication, some help might come from sourcing, some help comes from technology, and some from the solutions that connect these processes automated, right?
Right.
And so what we see right now, I would hesitate to say the single solution to shared services is this RPA or IA.
And that's certainly not something we would say either.
It's not what I mean. I sat into in the discussion group that you guys ran yesterday when we had these breakouts and we had people from different industries coming in. Love to hear their questions to you guys. They have specific questions. How do we make sure that we can scale? How do we know what the right use case is? Those are smart questions.
Right.
And what I love to hear is more people today are asking those questions. So they've been reading our website, I hope. They've been talking to some of the consultants, and I think they understand what they can do. But you're absolutely right. A lot of the optimization that shared services leaders are tasked with right now will come from smart automation, right? And it's not even, how far into this are we? I mean, we run a survey every year. Very still, I would say the early days. Although the mass market has understood it, we talk a lot about it now.
Right.
The implementations are there, pilots, testing, certain. But the capability, when you really think about it, if you have a globalized type of infrastructure for the GBS, there aren't that many, there may be 200 organizations in the world that actually run GBS.
Right.
But someone with that kind of a model is in a great position to really leverage what automation can do.
So you touched on the survey, and I think one of the things that SSNO has always done so well is solicit input from the community, really have their pulse on the community. Hence the creation of forums like this one, and the emphasis on automation at SSOW. So as you're talking to practitioners out in the field, as you're examining those survey data, there were reasons when all this got started that people started exploring the idea of automation. Are you seeing those reasons continue to be the same today, or are you seeing some change in the reason why people want to implement RPA?
Interesting. I would say early on, why were people interested? Because it allowed you to perhaps circumvent many humans doing something, right? So the FTE issue, which is one of the reasons that in the early days they outsourced or offshored activity, lower cost, maybe the same number of people. That was one solution. I think the reason there are many reasons, but one of the simple reasons was certainly cost avoidance through FTEs. On the other hand, you have reasons like compliance, control, confidence, right? The cost of getting that wrong is huge.
Right.
You might not have incurred the cost you may have, but so that would be another reason for going for automation. I think the reason there's no easy answer to your question is that as the solution goes ahead, the market follows eventually. As the market's up there, the solutions have already jumped up a stage. So we're not talking about, 3 years ago we were talking mainly initially desktop. We then went into kind of, whatever you want to call it, platform-based or enterprise-based. Now we're talking about cognitive, machine learning, artificial intelligence. So it kind of takes where people were going, it adds another cog, and that cog leverages them. It's not just moving you up, it's in all ways digitally re-engineering everything you thought you know.
Right.
So I think to answer your question, I think the reasons are probably different now. I think in the early days it was probably cost and trying to eliminate humans. I should say not eliminate, because the fact is most practitioners will tell me they didn't actually replace humans. Well, they did for the specific job, but what they actually do is they redeploy them, if you like, or they reskill them.
That's right.
Those humans, no one ever sat around saying, I have just enough work to do.
Right.
Everyone's behind.
Right.
So the automation has allowed them to take that repetitive activity away from them. Now humans can be intelligent, right? Now they can add knowledge. So I don't mean to give the impression that they really were trying to cut out those humans. But I think the driver in the early days was the attractiveness of replacing bodies with automation so that the bodies can do something else. Yeah. I think today that probably still holds to a certain extent, but I also think, don't you, that as we realize that there's, the data question that we started talking about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, it didn't go away. We got distracted by this shiny bubble.
You're right. You're right. And the data is going to be so important as we move into artificial intelligence.
Back.
It does.
I feel like it comes back.
It does. There'll be a new emphasis on it, and I think that I know what we've been saying, and one of the things that I've said when we started our RPA program, we needed to do a data strategy at that time that was inclusive of what we were doing with RPA, and it was a mistake that we made. There's something that we wish we had done earlier, because we started to move that direction. But you learn what you learn along the path.
We didn't know then, and what I find interesting now about our market, our shared services market, again, they understand now automation is great for this.
Yeah.
However, we now have some free hours. Right? And we have new tools with which we can use that data that was always still interesting, do analytics, more analytics, get more business intelligence and insight, feed the data into these algorithms, create machine learning opportunities, grab some of these AI capabilities that really I haven't got my mind around yet. I mean, not even remotely. But so my point is that the drivers, I think what brought people into RPA was the more, the simpler measure or metric. I think what's keeping them in and getting them to bring in more partners is suddenly it's as if you've opened this box and you realize I can do so much more. Right. But you couldn't have known that, AJ, I think years
Not at
ago.
the time. Not at the time.
Because we were all focused on the first step. But this is the beginning. I think we'll look back and go, gosh, remember when we were just excited about a desktop application or this? When, I was at a conference recently, I think on blockchain that we put together, which was fantastic. And someone talked about blockchain in collaboration with robotic automation kind of becoming like what did they say? I've forgotten it now, but it was like it'll become the brains of how an enterprise works. Right. And it'll do, those kinds of capabilities, however you fit them into what we're now calling automation. Right. Will add on to that. The definitions will expand, and I think there's a lot more for our market certainly to be excited about. I think so too. I think we have more exciting times ahead of us. Thank you so much for taking the time. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Everybody, remember that you can find Ask AJ on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. You can follow me on Facebook and Twitter at Ask AJ Hanna, no H on the end, and we'll see you again next time. See you again next time. Thank you, AJ. Thank you, Barbara.